Well, you ask a lot of questions, so let's see if I can answer all of them. It probably will not be in the order in which you gave them to me. My experience with issues of social justice really are, in fact, my biography. I grew up in New York City on the edge of Harlem and in a very diverse community before diversity was valued. Um, we had the distinction of having Chinese Spanish restaurants, the only Chinese Spanish restaurants in New York. These were Chinese who had immigrated to Cuba and then from Cuba to the United States. In the community were also Jews, there were Puerto Ricans, Dominicans from the Dominican Republic, few Haitians, people from the South, people from the West, and so forth. So it was very diverse to begin with at that time. I went to school outside of my neighborhood, and in class I had Irish and Italian youngsters and Puerto Ricans, and then I found the diversity of New York kind of intrinsically interesting, as such that I had a hobby of riding my bicycle all over New York City. In fact, I think I've been on every street in New York up until 1970, and did this mainly out of curiosity for the different kinds of neighborhoods and the diversity of people there. Little did I know that that was the beginning of my career as a sociologist. When I went to college, I found that largely the only subject matter that formally looked at issues of what we now call diversity was sociology. It had a long tradition of studies of ethnic and racial communities, urban studies, studies of social problems, and so forth. So I found that to be intrinsically interesting to me, and was a continuation of my interest in different sorts of people from growing up in New York. In 68, 69, I was a merchant marine, and went around the world twice on a steamship. And so I got a chance to go to many of the countries that of the people who lived in my neighborhood and the people who I was interested in college. So I got to China, I got to Japan, I got to Africa, India, Pakistan. In Africa, I got to South Africa, West Africa, East Africa rather. That kind of nailed it. I realized that the world was much bigger than what had been portrayed in textbooks and in the American narrative. So then when I came back, finished college, and went to graduate school, I specialized in urban studies and in race and ethnicity because of these interests. And then the first half of my career after my doctorate was in largely studying the impact of diversity and diverse communities on higher education. I worked with the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, and then I was a research and student service person at Santa Clara University, and interestingly got into IT at Stanford, which was looking at interestingly aspects of diversity. So I did all of that before I came to East Bay, and so then when I came to East Bay as a faculty member, I started teaching these courses out of intrinsic curiosity and also out of professional interest. Now you call it social justice, but this has been going on long before we called it social justice. Well, successes I've had in integrated, well, first of all, I've always had and always put issues of racial, ethnic, and social class diversity in my curriculum. I mean, that's in all of my courses, even research methods. I think I have the privilege and luxury of teaching material, so I don't have to figure out how to pigeonhole it in or shoehole it in to subject matter that ordinarily is not associated with social justice. So it fits very nicely into a sociology course, sociology curriculum. Now, successes I've had I guess I have a number of graduate students who have gone on and who are now faculty at other universities, so perhaps that's a success in their teaching diversity and social justice issues, what we now call social justice issues as well. So that's a success. Also, I think I have been able to help students in one culture get a feel and a sense of what it's like to be in another. And though I can't measure that or haven't measured it, I think that has been a major contribution to their undergraduate education, for them to be able to have a moment in their life to see what it's like and what the issues are for other people who they may not have any formal exposure to. So I think that's a big victory, a big success right there, and that's intrinsic to the curriculum. So I've been doing that for 25 years. Now, the notion of calling it social justice, I think, is interesting, because we have this tendency every 15 years to redefine, rename something, and it then feels like it's new, or it's thought to be some innovation. But in fact, social justice has been called diversity, it's been called affirmative action, it was called in the 1970s and late 60s, it was called civil rights. And in fact, the term for most of its history has been called civil rights issues. But we keep redefining, and that's all right, there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to know that the issues of teaching social justice and of advocating and wanting to see it happen is as old as this republic. Well, my greatest challenge was when I was an undergraduate. It's not been as a professional, as I mentioned, because my discipline, my field, is about that, and is about the study of it. So I've not had colleagues or an institution interfere with the material in my curriculum, in my classes, or another. So I can't say that I've had particularly challenges there of getting that into my materials. But as an undergraduate, I went to a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, where I was one of 5 African American students, and the vast majority of the students in the college, 2,000 students, were white youngsters from communities that had never had any experience with African Americans, other than as maids, servants, and as crime figures as such, in criminal justice. So I felt like by my junior year, I spent almost 2.5 years explaining, defending, struggling with people who were completely ignorant of these issues. And that was a those were formative years for me, because I think that was where I really had I kind of cut my teeth on how to address these issues and how to handle them when they were challenged. Um, I also had faculty who didn't understand the issue then, who were rankly prejudiced, racially prejudiced. And so I had to deal with them as a student in their class. So that was the greatest challenge I've had in this, of getting through Franklin and Marshall College under those circumstances. And as a student, I really should have been a faculty member, given what I did there at that time. Other challenges have been not so much from teaching, but from research and publishing in this area. I have a long engagement of publications that parallel my teaching, and going back to 1981. And if I may say, several of them are innovative works, such as Impacts of Racism on White Americans. And virtually all of this material has been well received in a number of quarters, but the greatest challenge is to get these materials in the hands of the people who need it the most, but who are also the most resistant to reading it. So that has been a struggle from day one. And I've had several books that have started off with slow sales because of this unwillingness on the part of the general public or general reviewers to accept materials or to understand materials that challenge the canon. But these materials, these books keep selling. And I've had people come to me many times years later telling me, "Oh, I read your this, that, and another, or you're the author of this. It changed my life. It was a major work for me to help me to understand what I was trying to do and to explain the social justice issues which I was trying to get across to my class, university, department, or whatever." So there's been a huge contribution in those publications, but at the same time a great deal of resistance to them, and still is. Can the disciplines outside of the social sciences integrate social justice issues into their materials? I believe they can. I believe they can, based on people who biologists, physicists, chemists that I know who do and have successfully integrated this material in. I mean, it's not like this is just simply something for the social sciences or more in general the humanities. This is part of the human canon, and anything we have to do, anything that has to do with the human experience, should and must find some way to reflect the full experience rather than limiting it to simply one group. So examples and illustrations, it's quite possible to have those in the hardest of sciences and technologies. And there are, and this is not something that we have to invent, because there are people who are doing an excellent job of it right now.
And then the final question.
How can students benefit from social justice? Well, first of all, it is as important as reading, writing, research, thinking, any of the skills that they've gained from any of the so-called academic or skills that they've learned as an undergraduate, the general education skills. Diversity is one of them. It's got to be right in there. And the reason for that is because they're going out to work and to contribute in a world that is diverse. One can no longer simply be part of one's own ethnic, racial, or class group and expect to be successful in a world where boundaries have been broken down by speed and time and communications as such. And so you have to be able to deal with people of all different races, ethnicities, and social backgrounds. And it's just absolutely essential. No matter what discipline, no matter what field you go into, you business, science, social services, creativity, or whatever, it's a diverse planet now, and there's no turning back from that. One of my long-term critiques of the education here at East Bay is that students should have a second or third language, and the fact that we do not have a language requirement, I think, is absolutely criminal.